Hey guys, welcome back to Java Code Analyzer by Mac. Before we start, please click on the subscribe button and click on the bell icon to be notified for the next videos. So let's get started. So for today, we have taken the local variables in Java. So basically guys, the local variables in Java is a variable that is declared inside a method or a constructor or a block, and it is only accessible within the scope. So those kind of variables are referred to as local variables. Now let me switch to the Eclipse and let me try to show you guys that how the local variables can be basically declared. So I have taken a class here guys. So this is a class named as local variable, right? So now there are places where we can have the local variables initialized or declared. So this is a main method guys, like where we have taken public static void main, right? So for example, if I'm trying to declare a variable inside a method, so this is a main method. So I'm trying to declare a variable here. So let me try to take a variable as int of a is equals to 10. So this is called as local variable. This is a local variable. Why it is called as a local variable? Because the scope of this particular variable that we have taken is only within this main method. Now for example, let me try to have one more method with the name as public void add, and let me try to have two variables inside this. Int of a is equals to 20 and int of b is equals to 30. So now we have two local variables. So the scope of these two local variables that we have taken is only within this method add. So this is again a local variable. Now let me try to have a constructor. So let me try to declare a constructor. A constructor is nothing but which is having the same name as that of the class name. And now let me try to have the variable int of a is equals to 10, right? So this is a constructor. So in this constructor we have two variables. We have one variable which is int of a is equals to 10. And this is one more variable. This is a local variable that is specific to this main method b. And this is one more method in which we have two local variables which is c and d, right? So these are all called as local variables because the scope of these variables is only within their blocks respectively. Like for example, the variable a is a local variable and this scope is only under the constructor. Now we have here int of b is equals to 10. So this scope is only within the main method. Scope is nothing but guys, we can use this variable only within this block. We can use these two variables only within this add method. We can use this variable integer a is equals to 10 only within this constructor. Okay, so that is called as the scope. Now suppose you want to access this int of a into this main method. Can we do that? No, we can't access because the scope of that particular variable is only within that particular block. That is constructor. And the scope of this particular variable is only within this particular method. It is not under this particular method or anywhere inside this class. So this kind of variables are called as local variables in Java. Okay. Now coming back here guys, here if we are trying to check with respect to here if we are trying to see the variables that we have taken. So there are few characteristics with respect to the variables or local variables. That is the scope. The scope is limited to the method or a constructor or a block where it is declared. So that we have seen. Now the no default value, that is value must be initialized before the use. For example, I have taken the local variable, right? So this is a local variable. Now here if I am suppose if I have not initialized this, will it give me an error? No, it will not give me an error until I'm reusing its value or using its value. For example, if I'm trying to do something like this, int of sum is equals to a plus 10. Now the JVM, now the compiler will ask me to initialize this particular local variable. Okay, the local variable a must not may not have been initialized. This is the compilation error that I'm getting, guys, because whenever we are trying to declare a local variable, it is the job of the programmer to initialize that particular variable with a default value. But in the case of static or in the case of instance variables, guys, this value will be default value will be initialized by the JVM. Okay, so we have to initialize the value of a local variable. So for example, I have taken here as well one particular variable b is equals to 10. Now for example, if I don't initialize this local variable and if I'm trying to print the value of b, then it will give me a compile time error, because the compiler is telling me to initialize the variable b or to provide a default value for the variable b. So let me try to provide the default value. So now I have provided the default value for the variable b. So the compile error is gone, right? So whenever we are trying to declare a local variable, that variable should be initialized, explicitly initialized by the programmer. Okay, that is the one more characteristics of local variable. The one more is whatever the memory allocation. Now for example, we have declared this particular variables. So are the value initialized? Yes, the value is initialized, but the memory is allocated. The memory of this particular variables, that is local variables, will be allocated in the stack area. Okay, there will be stack area, there will be heap area in the memory, but with respect to the memory allocation, that are the local variables are stored in the stack memory. Okay, now whenever the execution of this method completes, when is initialized? When the method is called. At that particular time, we are allocating the memory to the local variables. And when the local variable memory is revoked, when the particular execution of the method is completed, at that time the local variable allocated memory is revoked. Okay. The next thing, guys, is with respect to the access modifiers, right? The access modifier, we cannot have access modifier like private, public, or protected with respect to the local variables, but we can have final with respect to a local variable. Now for example, if you see, if I'm trying to declare this particular variable as public, it will give me a compile time error, because see, defining the access modifier does not make a sense, because the scope is only within this method, right? So at that time we cannot try to have any access modifier for that, but we can have final as an modifier for that particular variable, local variable, because we are trying to declare that with the help of this final, that this value is constant throughout the execution, or it is finalized with respect to the value that we are trying to declare. So with respect to a local variable, we cannot have either public, we cannot have either private, we cannot have either protected as the access modifiers for the local variables. The only permitted modifier with respect to the local variable is final. Okay, so this is called as access modifier restriction to a particular local variable, guys. Okay, so these are called the characteristics of the local variables. The first characteristic is that the local variable is only accessible within that block or a method or a constructor, and the default value should be explicitly defined by the programmer before using that particular local variable. The third is the memory allocated for the local variable will be done when the method is started execution, and it is revoked when particular method execution completes. and we cannot have the access modifiers with respect to the local variables. The only permittable access modifier or the permittable modifier with respect to the local variable is final. So this is nothing but local variables in Java, guys. Okay. So this is a repeated interview question, that what are the characteristics of local variables in Java. So for that, we can try to explain the interviewer with this particular characteristics that we have with respect to a local variable. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching.